Live streaming is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is January 28, 2022. We want to thank Clinton Ignatoff and his amazing podcast, Concerned Netizen. Thank you, Clinton. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Lucas Reiner. Is that the correct way to pronounce it, Lucas?
You did great, Jerry.
Lucas, such an honor and a pleasure. Where are you calling in from?
Thank you for having me. I'm calling in from Screenville, California.
How cool.
No, I'm in Inglewood, California.
Inglewood, that is cool. We're close. I'm in Venice.
Okay.
So, what is the best thing for a human being?
Oh gosh, I'm not an authority on that at all, but I think every human being's very different. So probably whatever makes that human being happy would be the best thing for them. But I don't think there's a panacea, recipe for what's best for every human being, because everyone is very unique and different. One person's, poison might be another man's, whatever the expression is.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's good to establish this early. A lot of these questions are like, well, I'm not a neuroscientist or I'm not a psychologist, but it's really what I'm after is your hunch or your guess. So that was a good statement. And I especially like your word recipe there, because it's just sort of your impulse or your intuition. And I'm not holding it to you. Like I asked my mom, I said, can I interview you? And she said, yeah, but everything I say today, it might be different tomorrow. So it's not like I'm holding you to these. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one. I don't know if I'm inclined to say art, but I don't know that art is really about information.
Well, I would say that's very valid. Art is a very valid way of information. I've had it, so many different answers for this.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that. I mean, the woman a couple of days ago said water. And then people
yeah. Again, well, I think it's also, like your first question, probably depends on what you need in the moment. Like sometimes water is the perfect communication, the perfect thing, the sky, a cloud passing, nature does it a lot, I think what we get from nature is something that's hard to quantify, but something that we need. And the more cut off we are from it, the more dependent we become on, on mediated information. And I think mediated information can be problematic because it's not whole. It's not, unadulterated. And then you end up sort of hashing out the mediation, the spin, how things have been spun.
You're really touching on a lot of the things we're going to talk about, because I remember one time I asked, what's the best thing for a human being? And the person said animals. And what they were basically saying was nature. And so, see, when I say, what's your favorite form of information? It's a debatable thing because it depends on what you define as information. So again, these questions you're putting it into the context you want and questioning the question, or trying to define the words what they mean to you. Because one person said, what's your favorite form of information? And they said hugs. So we don't think of hugs as information, and we don't, we think of art, but some things, what's your favorite form of information? People go reading or, TikToks or something that's more tangible. But like a lot of these things, it's not necessarily because I asked a question that it's tangible, that it's like something you can hold. Because I mean, can you really hold art in your hand? Well, yeah, you can hold the painting, but can you hold the experience of the viewer looking at the painting in your hand?
Yeah, I think it's also so fleeting because information, if you're trying to fix your car, then your favorite kind of information is going to be an owner's manual. I mean, I think, and if you're feeling lonely and in need of affection, then a hug is going to be the best communication.
Yeah.
But if you want to be alone at that moment, a hug is going to probably be, a bit of a burden. So I think it's all relative, maybe, and there's no one thing. I hate to say it like that, but
no, don't. It's spoken well, because we're going to get into McLuhan a little, and he called it center without margins. That it's environmental, or they say, like, you got to put it into context. It's like context.
well, that is true. I think context is something that's often missing.
Yeah.
You know.
So why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Oh gosh, I haven't ever thought about that, but I think it might have something to do with fear.
Yeah.
Like, might have something to do with wanting to gain control of one's environment.
Yeah.
And I think there might be a feeling that if you have all the answers, if you have all the information, you'll be safe. And so it's interesting because we were talking last night with a friend, and he brought up the question, what would our lives look like if we lived them without fear? Fear of each other, fear of whatever. There's a zillion fears that people have. And I think information, well, you could even say, empiricism is a kind of quest to have all of the answers, to know everything in order to conquer whatever the enemy. But what is the enemy? It's the enemy is fear. I don't know. I'm just, I'm not an expert, but this is
you get what we're after. This is beautiful. I appreciate it, because you put it in an emotional state. But now the next question is, in regards to information, is this need or want to collect information, just your hunch, more innate or more invented?
More innate or more invented? Invented meaning kind of
well, it's
outside of us.
Well, it's interesting you're asking me to define invented, because it's like this. It's hard to distinguish between inventing and discovering, but we probably could agree that we are innate to eat food.
Right.
That it's innate in us to eat
survival.
But some people say that breatharians don't eat, they just live on breathing. It's like, yeah, right, good luck. But we invented how we eat food, how we prepare it. So it's so hard to separate, like, this, we want information or we need information. Like, you can't go around in this day and age and not be bombarded by information. Doesn't matter where you are. I'm waiting on the corner on my bicycle, and there's billboards everywhere. What am I supposed to do? Just not say, I don't look at them, you know?
Right.
So it's just like, somehow we think we need information. You said the word survival, but it's like, it's funny, because a couple of my questions are more. I know it's both and it depends, but your hunch, is it more innate or more invented?
Well, I mean, you bring up billboards, which is kind of an interesting thing, because yes, you can't pretend they're not there, or that they're not bombarding us. But in fact, it's we who imbue them with psychic import or not.
Yeah.
It's really, and that's maybe our one, that's a freedom that we have. So, and at different times in a person's maybe development, you have a different need for that kind of information, or a different interest, or vulnerability to that. You know, it's kind of like breathing in and breathing out. So maybe there's something innate about it, and curiosity and to learn. But then I think once you understand something about it, you no longer see them. Probably, you know. But what was the thing you just asked? I can't about.
Well, no, you said it. You leaned a little towards more innate. Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented? I mean, it's fine. You don't have to. One other thing is you don't have to answer these questions. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think it's also the kind of information. You know, there's. I think we decide on what's important. You know, I mean, certain things are concrete. The breathing, eating, you know, getting hurt, fire, you know, there are concrete needs, physical needs that we have.
Yeah.
But once those are met, then what?
Yeah.
Then
what?
Yeah, you know, and then you know, I think we often are focused on the wrong things. You know, we're often focused on I don't know. Anyway, right or wrong.
Lucas, you evoked two great things. This great experimental film scholar, PM Sydney, I says, what's your favorite form of information? He said, pillow talk.
That's a good one.
It's because his wife had died and he was so in need of pillow talk.
He was missing that.
He was missing it, so it was on his mind, and that's a form of information.
Yeah.
So did we invent it? Well, we invented the bed, kind of, and the pillow.
Right. He needed that. There's great things that come out of that. I think that need or want, desire. You know, that I just heard this other one that great song, "Save the Last Dance for Me."
Yeah.
Doc Pomus' song. He was in a wheelchair when he wrote that.
Yeah. Wow.
So he couldn't dance. He probably wanted to have the last dance, right? But
yeah, there's a great doc on him. He's
there's something about creating, you know, that your own reality that I do like about that question and about pillow talk, what you were saying, because
you're a creator, and we're going to get into that. Just a few more of these basic philosophical questions. But the other thing you evoked that was really good was they asked Rauschenberg, what kind of painter are you? And he goes, I'm a landscape painter. And it's like, yeah, my landscape is ripped up billboards. That's my art, is ripped up billboards.
But he's accurate, totally true, because he painted the environment. He didn't paint.
He painted the environment.
Even if there were people in his paintings, it was part of the environment.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it's just, see, we traditionally, it's this like, all words are metaphorical, but it's this, we're juggling. Poet said, when I talk to you, I got to use words. We're juggling what we want to think is the collective meaning of that word. You know,
right.
And, like Lily Tomlin said, reality is just a collective hunch.
Right. I love that.
Yeah,
and that's why poetry is so valuable, because it asks us to take these common words and these common collective ideas, and each poet is redefining those. And so to get to read a poem, you have to get to know who that poet is and what they mean when they say that word. And to me, that's like the truest. There's such truth to that.
It's amazing.
You know, because it cuts through this generalized pseudo understanding, this shorthand understanding that we all kind of use to get through the day.
Yeah, pseudo and shorthand understanding. Boy, you're touching on everything. We're going to get to those, but a few more of these. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yes.
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
decide what to think.
I like that.
That just popped into my head. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm asking for, is what pops into your head. See, Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. And McLuhan said, I don't know what I think until I say it. So
Yeah.
it's interesting with all these people I've been interviewing, how they fill in that blank, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So what to think? Well, yeah, thinking. Yeah, I shouldn't say it's a decision. I mean, that's more. There's different kinds of thoughts, but the thoughts. I mean, I can relate it to painting. I don't know what something is going to look like until I see it. You know, when I'm painting something, I don't know what it's going to look like
Right.
till it's there. So thinking, yeah, I mean, there's the thoughts that you design to think to, and then there's the thoughts that kind of come from nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think we're all, I don't know, just speaking for myself, I'm often, you know, kind of navigating that terrain of what my thoughts are or what my logic system tells me versus like what that great Bresson called it, the fish that comes from nowhere, you know, like where a thought just comes and you don't know where it came from. And so then I think with that negotiation, we're not really, that's why I don't think theories are very, for me, not really for me. I never had one. I never worked with one because it's just too much uncertainty, you know, there's too much uncertainty.
No, I like that. And you mean Bresson, the filmmaker? Which Bresson?
Yeah, Robert Bresson, is it?
Robert Bresson, the guy
French,
who made, he made the donkey film guy.
Yeah. Hussar Balthazar and L'Argent.
Yes. The
Pickpocket.
fish that come, he said the fish that comes from nowhere.
Well, he was talking about it in editing terms. Like there's, you know, he was talking about it like achieving a good edit in film. He said it, you know, there's all these different techniques about when to edit something, when to cut something, when to cut from one thing to another. And a lot of them are dictated by, you know, convention or preordained ideas. But he said a good edit should be like the fish that comes from nowhere. Like when you look at the edit, you feel there's a kind of a surprise and a naturalness and a surprise to it that it's not jarring, but it like getting back to nature, getting back to nature.
No, you'll love this one. Either Cezanne or Matisse said, if you take your painting and put it in the bushes and it blends in, it's good art.
Oh, that's great.
I think that is.
Well, Cezanne threw a lot of his paintings up in the trees. You know,
it's probably Cezanne.
The tree behind his studio was filled with paintings. Apparently, he would throw them up there.
But also, what you said about editing evokes, you know, Peter Bogdanovich just died, and in one of his obits, it was so good because when someone dies, they like want to take a key thing they said in their life and regurgitate it to us. And so it was amazing. He said, you know what I learned from Howard Hawks is cut on the move. You know, and right. You know, don't you know, anyways.
But that's a very conventional kind of editing. I mean, it works. So it's done a lot, but it's a very it's a known convention, and it's kind of I don't think it's what Bresson was talking about. You know, I think he was talking about something else. But
don't be afraid not to cut on
the
move.
Right, like you don't know when you're going to catch a fish. I guess his reference was to fishing, right? You don't know if you're fishing when you don't know the moment you're going to catch a fish.
Yep.
So like have it be as mediated. Again, it's like this is question of mediation maybe, or conventional.
Yeah.
You know, and some we need them. We use them, but
that is again, I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity. You know, it's like don't worry. But the next question is, can humans think without language?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, Gary. I mean, I'm a visual person. So I would say I doubt humans can, but blind person who's never seen anything, born blind, I'm sure they can think.
Yeah.
A person who's born and hasn't heard anything, I'm sure there's thoughts in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that was good because Chomsky says
That's
that.
above my pay grade, that question.
Yeah, but look at you, dude. You you can say pass or I don't know, but
Okay.
saying I don't know is totally valid. It's not like I'm trying to put you on the spot and say you should know this or have an opinion. But I like when you just throw out your hunches because that's more what I'm after is like that surf. We're like deep sea diving. We're going like just your impulse.
Okay, you're going to put a disclaimer on this interview saying that these are not expert opinions.
There's the disclaimer right there. No, I don't interview experts. That's okay. And Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do, Lucas, when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm always trying to get language to break down. I mean, that's what, for me, that's what painting is. It's trying to get back to or ahead forward to, something pre-linguistic or post-linguistic. Painting is, for me, that's what I'm trying to get to. So when it breaks down, I feel fortunate because it usually means that I'm onto something else. Now I realize you can't organize a society around, that, but right. But
who says
painter?
If artists and poets run the world, if they were our presidents, maybe it would be better.
It would certainly be more interesting for a while. See what would happen,
Well, we met at Beyond Baroque. Thank God for Fred Dewey, and
thank you.
That was the center that spawned Amanda, who spoke at the presidential, inauguration.
I heard about that. Did she do the workshop there or the?
Oh yeah, she studied at Beyond Baroque. So her aspiration is to be the president of the United States. So hey, all the power to her.
She's got my vote.
Okay, two more thinking questions. This is Alan Turing in 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, he's the computer guy, right?
Yeah.
Thinking the function. I don't know. It's a different kind of thinking. If that's the case, that's a very different kind of thinking.
Yeah.
You'd have to. Wow, that would be interesting to build a society on that kind of thinking.
There you go. And his second one is, can machines think?
Oh God, I hope not. I don't think they do. And not by how I define thinking.
Right. Good.
Not by how I would define thinking. I don't think they can think. I think they can. I think not every human being can think. I mean, they're mechanistic human beings. I don't think. I mean, they're saying there's all that talk now about is AI, and the things I've heard. Where they have an AI read a poem or collect the subject's words, and then it spits out into another kind of poetry. It just doesn't cohere to me, what I've heard so far.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning. For me, happiness is like a byproduct of something else.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to be happy, but it's so fleeting, happiness. And it just seems that my experience is that it's always a byproduct of something else you're doing, you know?
Yeah. There's no right or wrong answers to any of these
Yeah.
questions, but Lucas, that one you got right. You know, I got it from I got it from Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He
Oh,
says,
I love it.
happiness can end, meaning can last. That's,
I
you know,
agree.
you said fleeting was a good word.
Yeah, I'm on the meaning side
Yeah.
of things. Yeah.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? So it's just as simple. It's like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
Say it again. Are we?
Is consciousness is bubbling away? Are we creating it or are we detecting it?
I think God, these are tough questions. They never asked me this in school. I think I think it's probably a negotiation between the two.
Between the two, yeah.
I think it's between the two. I don't know. I think, isn't that a little bit what 2001 sort of was about, or that he touched on maybe in that this kind of consciousness that exists outside of us and our engagement with it? I don't know. I mean, I don't think we're the be all and end all of creating consciousness, but I mean, it's often when people talk about being in the, you know, having a revelation or being in sync with something bigger than themselves. Yeah. And often it's discussed in terms of things outside. So I think it's some kind of internal, external connection.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a Mobius strip or a reciprocal, you know, or the snake eating itself or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
See,
well, this singer, that I met this incredible singer who was from Ukraine, and she trained with Grotowski in Poland, and she, in the last like 3 years, her voice has become just like, she has this perfect voice. It's so clear. And I did a workshop with her, and she said, she was doing an exercise, and she said, you know, people think your voice comes from inside of you, but it doesn't. Wow. It actually comes from outside of you. And anyway, she did this wonderful exercise all about kind of clearing away all of the obstacles to filtering the environment, to taking in the environment and producing a sound. And so it's maybe, I don't know, maybe that has something to do with your question of consciousness and or us creating it, or I don't know.
Or it's already there. Yeah. But it's interesting you brought up 2001 because Kubrick is quoted as saying, why did you make 2001? And he said, to convolute McLuhan. He actually said, you know, and I love that word, convolute. It means like twist him. So he invited McLuhan to the first press screening, and Marshall fell asleep after 10 minutes.
Oh, really?
No, he probably woke up and watched it all. But it's interesting because McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. So they're like, the metaphor was like they're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So you've sort of touched on this, like how do billboards really shape us? Well, there's an evidence they're telling us to buy this product, but there's something else that's doing in our environment. And so, you know, we look to Rauschenberg, and what the poet was saying is we can see and discover these hidden psychic effects of our inventions by turning to the artist or the musicians, or the poet or the singers. And then we can learn how to cope with what we don't like about the inventions.
Oh, that's interesting.
So here's one of McLuhan's main questions. And again, you brought up theory earlier. Marshall's not a theorist. He was all about asking questions. His question was, why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think?
Because they're embarrassing, maybe.
Oh, embarrassing.
I think because they're antisocial,
Yeah.
or can be antisocial. They're uncontrollable. They're a little wild. Because it has to do with the feeling world,
Yeah.
the emotional world, responsorial world of that is harder to control. I don't know the answer, but that's
that was good, Lucas, because it evoked this question I wanted to ask. I skipped it. Now I'll ask it. Is your observations of humans, are they more thinking beings or more feeling? I know it's both and it depends, but what's your inclination?
I think they're more thinking beings.
Really? Wow.
And I think that's the problem with the human race. I think they're not but most people are thinking too much.
Yeah.
Probably, and not feeling enough.
Beautiful. Captain Beefheart said, I had too much to think.
I had too much to think last night.
Yeah, I had too much to think. But my favorite is Bridget Bardot. She says, when I make love, I don't think. And I always go, good luck. I mean, here's the most sensuous thing we could do practically. And can you really shut off your brain? It's like meditation. They go, okay, now think about not thinking.
Yeah. No, I think we think and we think and we think and we overthink. And I'm not against thinking, but I think that sometimes it can be a defense against feeling.
Yeah.
And so Rauschenberg's response is a feeling response, and I think, yeah. Well,
Lucas, you nailed it, because most 80% of people, when I ask them that, they go, I think we're more feeling beings. So you said, I think we're more thinking, but they literally say, well, I'm going to think about this question. They're not going to feel it. One friend even flips it. He goes, I feel we're more thinking beings.
I feel we're more thinking. Well, I mean, we are feeling beings first. I think keep saying it. See, look how habitual it is to say, I think. Right. I mean, we are more feeling beings, and we're trained to be thinking beings. We're talked out of being feeling beings.
Yeah. And you can't separate feeling from thinking, sort of literally, or really, but literally, since we invented the word thinking and feeling, we think we can separate them.
Right.
But we really can't. They're like this.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
They're the same thing, probably. Ultimately. Yeah. Ideally, they're together.
Yeah. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Huh. I don't know. Right. Lately, I'm kind of worried that might be sliding into a period of anarchy, which I don't know if it worries me. It does worry me a little bit, because it's unknown. Again, it's the unknown.
Yeah.
So the unknown of that worries me a little bit. Like, what is that going to look like? And how do you live in that kind of instability and not, lose your footing, your ground? So I don't know, that's something that's come up lately. But I'm worried about human beings. I worry about human beings, I worry about what human beings are doing. Yeah. And it's interesting, because the language of at the moment of fear has to do with the environment, right? Like, nature is going to get us. Everybody's talking about climate change and the environment, and it's true, but it's also, it's primarily it's human beings that we have to worry about. And so it feels like that discussion is very superficial. I notice a lot of young people are kind of bored with that discussion too, because it doesn't seem to get deep enough into the problem of human beings that are. So I do, if you're asking, yeah, I worry about human beings.
Yeah.
Being so lost and off track that the decisions that are being made that affect so many people are not coming from a healthy place.
Yeah. It's really well put. I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the word anarchy because Utah Phillips, great folk singer, said, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not others.
Mm-hmm.
Who's entitled to make the rules?
Is that a question? I don't know. I guess the way it works is the ones who feel the most entitled.
Entitled. That was good because I've been struggling with the word on that question because I want to say who's entitled to make the rules or who should make the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I say who makes the rules, they'll go the ruling class.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Then we're stuck in that cycle of conversation of debate but I don't mind if it's a good rule. It's interesting. We're all following rules all the time, right? And
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
But it's language rules everything. My big quandary is as soon as humans invent something, they start making rules about it. So
Right.
imagine the first people inventing words, and they're like, "Don't use that word when you go to school."
Right.
You can use it in the back alley, and then don't print that. Don't And now it's an endless thing of why we need to have rules, or we think we need, and who's entitled to make them. But
Right.
this sort of follows along, and this is the great poet Audre Lorde said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. And Yvonne Reiner responded, she said, you can if you expose the tools. So my question is what new tool do you suggest or you gravitate towards? And you can apply it to dismantling the master's house or not. Just again, it's you're putting the questions into the context you want. Just because I start it with some cute quote doesn't mean you have to.
Right. So what was the tool? So you're saying, what was it? What tool do?
Well, what Audre Lorde said is you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. And Yvonne Reiner said you can if you expose the tools.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, isn't that it? Didn't Einstein say something similar about solving a human problem with a human solution? Like you can't solve a human problem with the same
logic that caused
that created the problem. So maybe that's similar. I don't know.
No, that's very similar, and it really goes to one of my favorites. Is Duchamp said, "There's no solution because there's no problem."
Oh, yeah.
But then
very Zen
that
kind of Taoist thing.
That could be like being Pollyanna and saying, "Well, you're not facing that there is a problem." See, I think you bringing up the climate.
Well, he was probably bringing in some Eastern wisdom, that came into the West around that time, much needed tonic,
very good. Yeah,
Eastern philosophy that kind of came into the West around the turn of the century or something, and it was a different way of thinking that maybe he helped try to introduce.
I think talking about Duchamp with the Eastern philosophy is very important because I think it goes back to your climate change thing is like, yeah, we can worry about climate change. I'm worried about it. But can humans really destroy Mother Nature? She's much too powerful to be destroyed. We can harm her and we can kill ourselves off with pollution, but we're not going to destroy her. So what's the bigger picture? See, that's really what I'm after. And you're getting it, Lucas, is I'm looking for the bigger picture, the comprehensive, not mean, there's evidence here that you can, think about. Let's try this one. Are
Yeah.
you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Oh gosh, that's a good. I'm not. I don't know if I'm afraid of ideas.
Yeah,
I don't feel afraid of ideas.
good.
I mean, I just, whether an idea is new or old, I guess I tend to look at it as, how do I use that?
Yeah.
Is that something I can use, or something I can put in, take in and work with?
Yeah.
Um, um, I mean, I guess my daughter was telling me about, I wish I could remember the name of the writer. But she's been doing a deep dive reading about, who is talking about how human beings are now unable to metabolize technology, the new ideas that are coming out in technology, daily or weekly, that we used to have more time to kind of get used to a new technological breakthrough.
Yeah.
Right? The telephone or the automobile, whatever it is. And now it's coming so fast that we're not able to metabolize it. And that might be contributing to our, psychic ill health. So I'm not afraid of those ideas, but I do think that, we create different methods of psychic defense against what's coming at us, whether it's, I don't know, some people take drugs or whatever it is. And so, just because there's a new idea doesn't mean you have to take it all in.
Yeah.
But a lot of it we do have to take in, I mean, with technology anyway.
Yeah.
Do
you mind if I ask, how old is your daughter?
She's 25. The one who, I have two daughters. One is 25, one's 20. The one who I'm referred to, she is 25.
Yeah, because that's very interesting. It's what we study constantly. And there's this term called TSA, situational, oh God, no, TSA, tactile situational awareness, TSA. It's like you're a bomber in your bomber plane and you get hit. You have 4 to 10 seconds or less. You can't look at the gauges. You have to respond immediately.
Yeah.
And the new doc at Sundance opening today is about that crash where the plane was defective, but they think they blamed it on the pilot because the plane's computer took over and he had 4 to 10 seconds to make his decision. And so the kids who are your daughter's age, I mean, they're not kids, they're young adults now, they have so much media coming at them that they don't relate to just one. So it's in essence, some people say, well, that's better because we grew up, we like, oh, I'm a transistor radio person. Oh, I'm a PD person. Or he got adapted to the one thing. Whereas now you're carrying around in your pocket a TV studio. Imagine if your dad had a iPhone 12, he could have done live TV, walking down the street and broadcast it to the world, because right now we're doing what he did in the 50s in New York with TV. It's live TV. This is live TV. It's amazing. So that really helped me what your daughter said, because reading humans' inability to metabolize the new technology, that's an amazing verb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many different technologies now. And so the question is, you had about, being afraid of new ideas or old ideas. I mean, old ideas don't scare me, but I guess maybe the new ideas, I'm not sure. I feel a little more trepidatious about some of them, you know.
Well, I'll tell you this. Tell
Like
your daughter.
living in a space station, you know, living in
Like what?
space, like living in space
Oh,
station,
like living in space.
you
Yeah.
know, or auto drive cars. I mean, some of
Yeah.
this stuff doesn't, you know, it's kind of great to be able to think about it all, you know,
Yeah.
but then it feels like there's a period of time between the discovery or invention and then the discovery and then the, you know, trying to decide, well, is this really how we want it to go? Is this how things should go?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening so fast now. And so you know, my friends just had a Tesla crash into his wife's spa, and I don't know how it happened, but you know, anyway, it just feels like that might be one component of the anarchy coming. Who knows? You know that.
But again, tell your daughter, I appreciate the fact that she read it in a book and was willing to tell you and didn't say, I
Oh
saw
yeah.
I saw a TikTok, Dad, that taught me this. But
Oh no, she's yeah.
You know, all the power to all the mediums. I don't
I
want
agree.
to say one is better than the other, but to you know, we knew growing up that books have some value and there's something about books. And
Yeah.
so
And that television was kind of, you know, I mean, God bless my father for being there at the beginning of television. And you know, but there was a feeling after school at 3:30 when I got home and turned on the TV and watched the string of, you know, 70s, 60s, 70s comedies. And there was a feeling of that we weren't going like that. We were sort of going like a little more, you know, concave into, you know, into some, you know, mediated universe that.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And we, you know, it's like, oh, wow, what's this ride? What does this do? You know, kind of try it out. But
yeah. Well, there's a good word in there. It's very poetic. Mediated. It's like we got ate up by TV.
We got ate up. Yeah. And I think then having, you know, after that, having unmediated experiences, you know, that became so much more powerful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Yeah, that's what it does. So can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Oh, I'm horrible with that. No. You know, it's hard growing up with all these photographs and stories, you know, to differentiate the things I saw pictures of when I was younger or, you know, heard stories about me.
Yeah.
But my memory is so bad from when I'm young. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, my father always told me how I couldn't wait to put on my shoes and, you know, tie my shoelaces. I could walk at 7 months old. And he said, oh, and you tied your shoes right away. You know, like I was just kind of ready to go, I think. Ready to move on.
You got the word was conjure. So
yeah.
Do you think memory is more a curse or more a blessing?
Curse. If I had to choose one or the other, I don't think it's it's both. I mean, it's both.
Yeah.
You know, it's both. It's so wonderful to remember things, and it's a curse too when you're trying to move on. Again, it's like, I don't mean to be so situational about it, or what is that called? The situational ethics, but you know, it's what you're trying to do. I mean, spring is the worst. That's what T.S. Eliot said. It's the curse of memory and desire. You know, you want to move forward. Spring, April is the cruelest month because of breeding memory and desire. You know, it's like you want to move on, you want to move forward, and yet here it is. It's spring, and you're thinking about the past.
So Lucas,
or the future.
Yeah. Tell me, this is two parts. Tell me just briefly, one person within your immediate family who made an impact on you, and what was that impact? And then one person outside your immediate family that had an impact on you, and what was that impact? Just briefly.
Oh yeah, well, the greatest impact. My mother, Estelle Reiner, had the greatest impact on my life.
What did you get from her mainly?
Well, I mean, she was a painter, and she started painting again when I was very young, when I was born, I think. She had my brother and sister years before me, and I think had stopped painting possibly, and then she started again when I was young. I used to hang out in her studio, and I would set up an easel and paint with her. I think she taught me, ironically, something about solitude, quiet.
Oh my God.
Because she didn't always talk. She wasn't super talkative when we were alone. And she taught me about beauty and nature. She showed me seashells and branches of trees when I was little. She'd bring things home to her studio and just would point them out. She would say, look at this, isn't this beautiful? And she would show me a seashell or some kind of tree branch or something she found. And that stopping of everything and focusing on that little piece of nature, it introduced me to the world, and not to mention the world of art. But to me, they're so closely related, because her studio was full of paintings and objects, and she had, catalog raisonnés, art monographs of, Cezanne, Bonnard, Pollock, Georges Braque, Matisse, Alice Neal, Morandi, all these incredible artists that I got to discover when I was young. And that she often would point things out to me. She would just say, look at this. Or, and that continued up until I was 16, and she'd come in my room with a Cy Twombly catalog with an essay by Roland Barthes and say, here, look at this.
Wow.
And I would look at this, artist Cy Twombly of these scribbles. And it's like, well, my mom said to look at it. She hasn't been wrong yet, so I better look. And then she also came in with Engels, with Engels, The Origin of Private Property, Marriage, and the State, when I was 16. She gave me like some heavy things, Probably needed a teacher to get through that book at that age, but I got something from it, So she was, I would say, the biggest influence on me in my family.
That is one cool mom, man, and you really described it. If your mom comes in with Roland Barthes' catalog on Cy Twombly and says, read this, that is a cool mom.
Yeah, I mean, it was more, to be honest, I probably couldn't get through that essay at that age.
But just the fact that she was aware that, hey, this is something I will let my son. So now, outside your immediate family, anyone who had an impact on you?
Yeah, well, so many people, but I really should talk a little bit about my friend Lawrence Carroll, who passed away about 2 years ago. I mean, I could equally talk about Fred Dewey, who you mentioned from Beyond Baroque. But Lawrence was also a painter who was really my first mentor, aside from my mother, was really Marty Lubner, who was a wonderful painter. He taught in Venice, private lessons, painting and drawing, and he painted his whole life up in West LA, in the hills, Mandeville Canyon, one of those canyons.
Oh yeah, my friend studied with them, Andre Wittenberg. She studied.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. He was a great teacher, and I had him privately for 2 years, and he remained a friend throughout my whole life. But Lawrence, I think in my sort of post-school education life, I met an artist named Lawrence Carroll. We exhibited together in New York, and we became friends, and very deep friendship. And he was kind of a mentor to me. I didn't really know what they don't really teach you in art school, and it's maybe impossible to learn it unless you just live it or meet somebody who happens to be very generous, giving soul is what is it to be an artist? How do you do it in the world? How do you do it? And anyway, Lawrence was somebody who opened that window for me and shared a lot of insights. And we had a kind of ongoing dialogue for, I don't know, probably about 15 years, 20 years, maybe longer. 20 years before he passed away. And so I would say Lawrence. Fred was also an incredible person to talk with about art and ideas. But I think for painting, which is such a specific and such a unique thing to do, and not so many people understand it or can talk about it. It was incredible gift to meet Lawrence and to know him.
Beautiful. And we're going to get into painting and poetry soon, but I like that Lawrence question that you studied with him. I should add it to my script because Fred I asked Fred all these same questions too, so it was fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And here's my new question I should ask people. How do you do it?
How do you do it?
Yeah, that's like, how do you just get down to the bass text? How do you do it? So if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I'd like him to say, or her to say, or it to say, them to say, all of that stuff. That in fact it was for a reason. It was that it did have a shape.
Nice.
And I mean, I kind of suspect things do. But I would, of course, to get a little, to get some kind of confirmation would be, that in fact that God doesn't play dice with the universe. That's what I'd like him to say. Einstein was right.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you pray?
I mean, I shouldn't admit to it because I think it's such a private thing, I mean, you shouldn't talk about it or tell people about it. You should go in a closet or something. I don't think I hate people when they talk about that stuff. It's so indulgent, and it's just kind of so counter to the, but I'm sure I have those thoughts that you would probably fall in that category.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful answer, because Rebecca Solnit said it well. She goes, just because you ask me a question doesn't mean I have to answer it.
Right.
And that's almost like you helped me learn that might be too private of a question to ask people. No one's ever, and I like that because I want people to challenge the question sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it is a private question, I think, but not to say you can't ask it, because how somebody responds to it is probably interesting to any of this stuff. But
it's also, no one's ever said that to me, so it helps me suss out the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think evil uses people as a vehicle. I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, these are so, difficult to answer, but I really don't know. I have a suspicion that evil exists, evil spirit or whatever you want to call it, and it looks for a host, looks for a body. And I once heard somebody say I don't know who it was, some metaphysician, about, the problem with capital punishment, or, is that then the soul, the evil doesn't die there. It just moves on to a new place. But so I don't think people are born evil. I mean, I think you can't, maybe you're born there with a choice. I think we have some free will to decide which way we're going to go. We're born with the capacity to entertain both ideas or all
Yeah.
different ideas, good and evil. And I don't,
Oh, I appreciate that, Lucas. You sussed it out well. And this is a follow-up is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'm going to set up a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to the Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, if you acknowledge what is, I mean, I don't like to write people off. I mean, the problem I have with that a little bit is that even your enemy is a human being, and you don't want, if you don't acknowledge somebody, it's kind of like saying they don't exist and poof, I don't know. I mean, I guess that could be a strategy to protect yourself, but I think even your enemies are human, and they probably don't,
Yeah, Ram Dass says, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like fill in the blank. whoever you like hate, what does hating do? You love them, but people like go, nope, I don't have any trouble hating so-and-so.
Yeah. Are we supposed to love our enemies?
That's what I mean. There's many things about this.
Love your neighbor as yourself, and then it's like love, but not just that. You should love your enemies too, right?
Yeah. And then American Indians, indigenous say your enemy's your best teacher. There's a lot to it.
Well, the enemy could become, maybe the enemy is like the shadow self, the shadow, and that you in that way you can learn something from the enemy, because you should learn, about the shadow.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we have enemies. That's why we react so strongly to certain forces and not to others,
Yeah. So James Joyce was the first projectionist. He ran a cinema in Dublin over 100 years ago called Volta Cinema. And he basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?
Oh, interesting.
Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Like, why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I didn't know that about Joyce running is that right? He ran a cinema? I mean,
Volta Cinema.
Wow.
And it's debatable. I heard he was the first projectionist, and people go, no, he was just the manager. And then that whole thing of him checking out is sort of ironic because he wrote books. What's the difference?
Exactly. Reading about Dublin, or why not just go to Dublin and walk around for a day? Why read about it? No, well, we seem to, I think what you said earlier about Rauschenberg, or about the artist is able to channel something or reveal something about phenomena that we still might need to try to get to, that nature doesn't give it all. If you're, I mean, I think I don't know who it was who said this thing about the first person to recognize that a sunset was beautiful, right? We all now say, oh, a sunset is beautiful. Sun setting down, the colors, the landscape. But that's because some person saw it and said, look at this. Or maybe they painted it or wrote a poem about it, and they called people's attention to it. And that's why we think it's beautiful. And I think we forget that. We think that everybody just has an innate sense of like that a landscape is beautiful, but we were taught that. Somebody pointed it out. And I don't know if you've had that experience where you're with somebody and you're at the beach and or seeing the sun go down and say, oh, look at that beautiful landscape. And at that very moment, you may not be seeing it. You may not. It may not seem beautiful. You may not feel like, oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because at that moment for you, what's beautiful, maybe if you look over and you see a person sitting there in a certain way in the light, and you say, oh, that's beautiful. So because it's connected to a moment.
Yeah.
So, and then of course those things become kitsch after a while.
Really good point.
Romanticism and then kitsch, but I think we do need it, because I think those observations and those, whatever, whether it's Joyce pointing it out or a photo of a tree, an image of a tree, something, if it can be revealed, some other dimension can be revealed about the thing, then it teaches, I hate to say it teaches us something. It's not the right word, but it opens our eyes to something more.
Seeing with new eyes is really good, opening our eyes, because McLuhan said understanding is not having a point of view. So, we want to say, I love Facebook or I hate Facebook. It's like, hey, you live in a Facebook world, dude. You don't have a chance. It's you can avoid it. I'm not on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But it's part of the environment. So then he says this other thing that seems sort of kooky is that we invented point of view when painters started painting vanishing point in the paintings. So that did we have point of view? Like, when your point is so well taken, when did humans first start saying that sunset is beautiful? Still there? Whoops. Okay, I lost you there, little Lucas. Are you still there? Okay. Maybe refresh or re-enter. I'll give it a few more minutes. Oh. Still there? Hello. Hey, Lucas, any idea what happened? It just froze. So, well, what I was going to do is, if you, okay, but hold on a second. Do you have a pencil there? Right, but we can because we should get Clinton involved, and I don't have long distance. So if you could, yeah, call Clinton or text him 613-858-6383. And just say we want to re-enter. Should we just hit the same link? And he might have to turn us on. Okay, thanks.
Is on.
Hey guys, so I'm talking to Lucas right now. He lost the internet, so it's this short
Right,
intermission.
so he can just get on through his cell. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
He's gonna try to call in, because there is a way to call into this service. So we'll have him back soon. All right, I've been listening in so far. It's been a good conversation.
Thank you, Clint. Clinton, so appreciate it. Boy, this has never happened. I was wondering, should I, if this happens in the future, should I refresh and rejoin? Don't do that.
Nope. You're connected. You stay connected.
Because I did hit refresh.
Lucas lost his home internet, so he's going to use his data plan to come back in. It's just going to take another minute or so, folks.
But does he? But I did hit refresh, and that's how I re-entered. And when I hit refresh, the first thing it said, enter meeting.
Yep.
It said you are live streaming.
Good. Yep. We never got kicked off of YouTube, so this is all still part of the video.
Okay. So we can just talk haphazardly till he gets here.
Yeah, more. I got one ear on Lucas and I got one ear on you, Jerry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
no, it's okay. But no, please share your thoughts with me, and I'm just saying I'm only going to be half listening.
If he can't get on, then we're done because his phone might not get on.
He'll be back soon.
Okay. Yeah, we do have his wife watching. She could have went and got a sandwich. But do you know this book his daughter was referring to?
I heard that. Yeah, a book about, as an interesting metaphor, the metabolization of technology.
Deep dive reading in humans unable to metabolize new technology. Situational ethics. Who studies? Who's the main people behind that?
Hello. All right, he's off the phone, so maybe that means he's trying to use his phone to connect and can't talk to me at the same time. But hopefully he pops in soon.
Yeah.
Situational ethics. I can't say. That sounds like a very precise definition.
Right. You know, for the Coach House Continuum, I had Tom Cooper said yes, Derek DeKirchhoff said yes, Bob Logan. I says, let's just continue the Coach House. And they all said yes. So I'm like, uh-oh, we got to get Clinton in here.
Oh, really? That's a great idea. Yeah. Sure.
You know, and talk about like Joe Rogan or Neil Young, you know, real current things.
It's going to be interesting. I'd love to see you need a sort of courage or fearlessness to address these situations with without towing perhaps party lines, so to speak.
It.
So it's
we'll hold them to the fire. Like, you can't have a point of view here.
Let's see here. Situational ethics takes into account a particular context of an act while evaluating it ethically, rather than judging it only by absolute moral standards. Okay. We got Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, Merleau-Ponty, Jaspers. Oh, are you getting a phone call? So now he's calling you. Okay. We're going to find out how this continues.
Oh, he's calling me?
I don't know. I thought I heard something. It wasn't me. Okay. No, we'll find out soon. I think he's installing the app. Now, remember, how was it that... one sec. I got to check my notes to make sure we've... I'll send him a quick email. All right, let's see here. All right, I sent him a hint. Hopefully that helps him in on the way, or maybe he can just phone in. Let's find out how to phone into this room, and I'll send him.
You mean then it would just be no picture and his voice?
That's right.
That's all right. Well, you know,
you got half of it. You got half of them. You know,
we got half of it. We could do it another. We could finish it another time if it's not workable.
Okay.
But you mean if he's downloading it, does it take that long? Download an app doesn't take that long, does it?
Oh, all right. So he's got plenty of options now here. No, downloading an app doesn't take too long.
No.
Yeah, no, it's funny. His internet went out halfway through the show. That's hilarious. It happens.
It usually happens more on my end. Well, it's happened a couple times. But what I'm amazed at, since we started this over a year ago, how in the beginning we had a few things like this, but for such a long run, we had no problems.
Yeah, we keep it pretty bare bones, so there's not a lot going on to break in the first place. So
Right, but is it because Zoom in this whole world of 8x8 and StreamYard has all just gotten smoother, or it's just always been as that capable and it we just got a lucky run? You know.
all right, yeah, it's been capable for a few years now,
Right.
because they have to make things as easy as possible, and it's got to be. If it keeps breaking on people, it'll drive them away. I mean, we've been doing video conferencing since the '90s, just very poorly back then, right?
Right.
And now everyone's doing this through the web browser, except for Zoom. Zoom is a desktop application, so that's got its own appeals and drawbacks.
You mean Zoom is desktop and 8x8 is what?
It's in a web browser. It's a web app.
It's a web app.
And
what
so is StreamYards is a web app.
Oh, StreamYard is a web app too?
Yeah. If you're all doing it inside of the browser window, inside of Chrome or inside of Firefox or inside Safari, then it's running, in your browser. It's on the internet. Or sorry, it's on the web. It's on the World Wide Web. Now, when you do Zoom, you click a link and it opens your browser, and then the first thing your browser does is open the Zoom program in its own window, right?
Wow.
Zoom's running in a real program on your computer.
So they're both as likely to have problems?
No. Zoom
will have less problems?
Probably have fewer problems, yes. They've got legitimate profit. They've got to account for it. They got far more features. They're a for-profit enterprise, whereas really all you need to get a good bare bones system like we're using here going is, well, I can't say a tin can and two strings, but this is a tin can and two strings for compared to Zoom, all things considered, what we're using right now.
Yes, StreamYard they're out for profit, aren't they?
I've never used StreamYard except as a caller in on shows.
But
yeah,
8x8 is out for profit, aren't they?
I pay $1 a month, Jerry. They're not out for profit per se. Not for me. They're out for profit. They've got they're a business to business. They sell video conferencing solutions to corporations. But what I'm using here is is like a side thing for them, where they just acquired an open source free software video conferencing technology and are keeping it free more or less, and I pay $1 for them to host the videos for me, so I can.
But could Rob Grant get 8x8
for $1 a month? Yeah, sure.
Anybody can get 8x8.
Anyone can. Hell no, you don't have to pay for it. You can use Jitsi for free. It's just then they won't save videos on the cloud for you. It's free. Remember when we were using Jitsi? It's the same thing.
Oh, but when you pay $1 per month, they save it on the cloud.
Yeah, I got a record button, and then boom, they save it all for me on their system. So I can download it later,
But if you don't want to record 8x8,
you can stream Jitsi to YouTube for free, and it's just like what we're doing here.
How do you spell it? IT?
JITSI.
JITSI.
Yeah. It's a free open source software. That's why I use it, because I like it when you can open the hood. Even if I don't know what I'm looking at, someone else does. That's good enough for me, right? Peace of mind. All right, let's see. No word back from Lucas here. No word back from Lucas yet for me. Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, I could call him. Should I call him or should you call him? Because maybe we just put it off to do a part 2 some other time, or should I
Yeah.
just?
Yeah, give him a call, Jerry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let's take a look at Lucas's website here.
Oh yeah, it's very nice.
So here's let's look at some exhibitions. Oh, first let's enable some scripts. Then we'll look at some exhibitions. Although this.
I think I can get back online.
Great.
Well, wait a second. They said, hold on. They said, I think everything just shut down here, and
You mean your server shut down?
yeah, I'm on the phone, and they said it should be coming back here in 1 minute. It's like, yeah, I think I can get on now.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks. He just his server went down and it said he's going to get back on in the next minute.
Okay, great. He's
But this means you will go on and edit this all out when you get a chance in the future, or we just leave it up this space in between.
I can take it down and then re-edit it, and I will have time for that when I'm done my move, or we just go like this and see what happens.
Right. What's the when is a good time to do the Coach House Continuum? In a week, or like when?
Yeah,
when
give me a week. I'm currently moving, so give me a week.
Because we have one next Friday, and then after that, try to plan something. See when we come to the opening.
Yep. That should be fine. Yeah. Good news, everyone. Clinton's moving. Yay.
Are you happy about your new place?
Yes, I am very much so. It should be great. I mean, I love the basement appeal of this place. It's got a great many charms, but this is going to be a definite improvement in all things. So I'm very happy. Yes. Well, I'm trying to find some of Lucas's artwork, and he links to the galleries, and his galleries then have everyone's artwork, and so I'm although let's just
And are you going to a Bob event? Is that on Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah, Bob's 100th birthday is on Wednesday at 4, and it's he's going to spam the links anywhere.
Hello?
Anyone watching this is invited.
Hello?
Ooh, look at that.
Wait a minute. Clinton, does Lucas need to hit the same link or a new link?
Same link as the old one.
Yeah, hit same link. Okay, here we go. Okay, he should be there any second now.
All right, great. Yeah, Jerry and I, our longtime acquaintance, McLuhan scholar, her radio host, and around Fascinating Spells got a thing on Wednesday. So,
Here we go.
welcome back.
Hey, thank you. That was a nice little break.
All right.
Got a sandwich, all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And I will leave you gentlemen to continue where you left off.
Thank you, Clinton.
Not a problem.
Thank you saving us, Clinton, and thank you,
You saved us.
for hanging in there. So yeah, we just got a few more questions in regards to now. We'll go into painting. Well, the last thing was I was just saying was McLuhan said understanding is not having a point of view. Get this big comprehensive awareness, like understand this end of the spectrum and that. And then of course we're going to have some sort of bias or some sort of aesthetic or taste leading us. But what he said, that point of view was invented when the vanishing point came about in painting. It almost like hocus pocus, because did people have aesthetic taste, and that's like the next question is you told us sort of how you got attracted to painting because your mom was inviting you into her studio, and she was actually, showing you what painters did in catalogs, and I'm sure she took you to galleries and museums.
Mhm.
What first attracted you to poetry to pursue that as a career? And it's really two-part question is, when did you go, well, I'm going to pursue uh painting as my calling, and I'm going to pursue poetry as a calling? Like what?
Well, oh, but I have to correct you. I've not pursued poetry as a calling. I
Okay.
mean, I've pursued poetry as a fan. My sister is a poet, and she introduced me to a lot of wonderful poems and poetry. I I'm very grateful to her for that. I don't know. I'd never pursued poetry as a poet, as a writer.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, when I decided painting, it was a calling that I realized at around 20 that I was going to do seriously. I mean, it took a few years, and it took losing it for a period of time, to feel how valuable it was to me to have it. Sometimes, you have to lose something. I lost painting for about 6 years, working in the film industry, until I rededicated myself to it. But I think I was about 20 when it first overtook me, and I realized that maybe that's what I would do with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up film, because a screenwriting teacher told me great art or great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. And Kubrick says the opposite. Great film or great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's how you use the word intention, or how you define the word intention. I think, with Kubrick, you do feel an intention. There always is an intention, but I think you want to maybe discover the intention. That's maybe the work that feels the most open and full and satisfying, is work where you feel the intention has been discovered through the creating of it, and not by adhering to an a priori, plan or intention to just execute a plan. For me, I mean, everybody, that's for my, what I like. So I think you have to have some intention, and even if you start with an intention that you stray from completely in order to make the work, and then discover by the end that, oh, actually, I started with one intention and I ended up someplace completely different. But it was you need some vague intention to start, I think, even if it's, can be, and usually is, very small, very slight.
That was good, Lucas, but it's also Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer, of your art, when you're painting?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not a shred.
Yeah.
Not for a second. I mean, that would be, for me, the end of painting, the end of making painting. I mean, it's like you just get lost. You're trying to get lost, and and so those thoughts about a viewer, or those are really external, outside, and they come in, they float in the studio. or they float in while you're making it. Then you go like, out, get out, get out, get away, get away. So there was that great, that great thing that I guess Philip Guston said, or I don't know if he was paraphrasing John Cage, about when you start painting, everybody's in the room with you, your mother, your father, your, lover, your wife, or whoever, everybody, your brother, everyone's in there. And then one by one, as you work, you kind of ask them to leave, you kick them out of the studio until it's just you painting, until you're alone in the studio painting, and then you leave.
Oh my God, then you leave.
And then something happens that's, then you can surprise yourself. And then you end up with, then you can really, so you're on your way to see, you have some intention or a vague idea of what you're doing, but I can't be too attached to it, because then it always limits, having the point of view, it limits what you're eventually arriving at.
Yeah.
And you want to arrive at something that's new and surprising.
I like that. And it's also reminds me of the cliche is that the journey is more important than the destination. So I ask people, well, why do we have to seek or name a destination if the journey is more important? And you sort of already touched on that. Say, well, there's got to be a vague or slight sense of destination. You use those two words, and I thought that was great. But the flaneurs or psychogeography is the guys in Paris in the 20s who said, we're just going to wander aimlessly. And if we stumble onto something, and they changed art forever. So it's like, what do you think of this? Why do we have to name or have a destination if the journey's more important?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question.
Because you said get lost, because it's almost like that get lost line really got me, because that was like, well, how do you get lost? Because it also reminds me of Frank Zappa, who said, I just make music for myself. If other people like it, great. And I was like, well, that's sort of romanticizing it. I believed him because he wrote music that wasn't as mainstream or accessible, but he knew if he hit certain notes or said certain words that people would buy his music, then he could make more music. So he was romanticizing that creative process. Like, we can't escape, if I paint this painting and someone buys it, then I can pay my rent. But you can't erase that. But like you said, how do you get those people, those desires, those things in your head out of the room? Okay, leave.
I have to get them out of the room in order to make a painting that for me would be at all interesting.
But how do you get them out of the room?
Well, you try, I guess it's that beginner's mind thing, you try to get to where a point where, didn't Robert Irwin had that line, or whatever, the book about Irwin, of seeing is forgetting the name of the thing you're seeing. You try to get to the point where, that kind of defamiliarization with everything is you're in that realm, and then you can really see something for what it is. So a painter that I just love is Giorgio Morandi, who painted the same bottles his whole life and some landscapes as well. But and I've had this experience painting trees where you think, oh, it's going to be another tree, and you kind of have to look at it so hard or hard is not a good word, but so thoroughly that you don't know what you're looking at anymore.
Yeah.
And then when you don't know what you're looking at anymore, you're just moving the material, and you don't know you're painting a tree. You don't know you're painting a bottle. You're lost in the you're lost in something else. And if at that moment somebody said, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you painting?" So, I don't know. I don't know. You wouldn't say. You would have to really step back and let people in the room to say, "Oh, I'm painting. This is what I'm painting: a tree or a branch or a bottle or a whatever." So it's a kind of, maybe it is sort of cultivating a kind of naivete.
Yeah.
Or more than naivete. But it's getting to the place where you really don't know what you're doing, where something new can enter, and that's where some kind of poetry enters, or some other story behind that word. Like you say, why I love poetry is that it's sometimes a simple word that you've heard millions of times, it's revealed to mean something else completely. Oh, I never thought of that in the context of cup or star or whatever the word is, So there's that, getting lost. There's a great, Robert Frost poem about lost in heaven, looking at the sky and kind of getting lost in the stars. That is just such a beautiful poem. I always go back to that. So I don't know. That's for me. That's why I can't invest too much in these in progress in art, progress in thinking about art.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. If you use the example of the perspective, 1-point perspective. Or the vanishing point perspective in the Renaissance, that kind of got everybody on the same page and oriented everybody from the point of view of the viewer. It privileged the viewer above every other perspective to, have access to the painting. But, the history of art, it took Western art up until probably Cézanne to get to that point. Of not to the point of perspective. I was thinking of Asian art, Chinese painting, where there's not this kind of single point perspective. There's a God's eye view, or as people call it, and Western art didn't get to that until many years later. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Progress in art is I'm using materials that cave people used, 50,000 years ago. So,
Lucas, you must have ESP, because that's my next question. But I have to tell you 3 things you evoked there. The McLuhan's line is so cool. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they
I
can.
love that.
That is amazing.
That is so beautiful. I had a very, very dear friend who lived totally by that philosophy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's what you're seeking, that purity when you get to that state. I love how you explain it. You're really good with words. You said cultivating naivety. That's a great 2 words that we can actually aspire to. And then Richard Modiani at Beyond Baroque taught me this one. Gary Snyder said, poetry is seeing the world without language, then putting that seeing into language.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's true. That's Gary Snyder.
Gary Snyder.
Wasn't he a Buddhist?
He's the only beat poet who's still living, because he's really a nature poet. Yeah, he's a Buddhist.
Oh, he's great. That's wonderful. I mean, that whole Suzuki beginner's mind, which Grotowski adopted and really got into in the 70s. And I had a very fortunate encounter with a teacher, one of Grotowski's disciples, Jurek Bagajevich, who taught these Grotowski workshops in Los Angeles in the late 70s. And so that idea was sort of introduced to me through this workshop of beginner's mind. And I think that is just something that can carry you, your whole life, because you're always starting, every time you start a new thing, you're beginning again. You're starting a new one, a new painting, a new poem, whatever it is. So and if you can really be in that mind, it's so helpful.
It's really good. And then bringing up Robert Frost was great because they asked Robert Frost, "Can you explain this poem?" And he said, "You mean you want me to say it worse?"
That's good.
So, what was the motive of the cave artist? Just your hunch, not what Herzog taught us in his movie or the New York article he based it on, or
I
what
didn't see that.
anthropologists say necessarily, but just your hunch. What was the motive of the cave artist?
I think they were trying to see what was on the other side of the wall.
Oh, I've never had that. Well,
I
suss
think
that
that,
out.
they
What?
always said that the blowing, I think it might have been John Berger.
Oh, Burger.
He might have suggested something like that, or I first thought of it while I was reading Berger, and he, they talk about the handprint on the wall where the artist or whoever blew the pigment onto the hand, and then the trace of the hand was visible then on the wall, and people who are more ego inclined interpreted that as like the cave painter's first signature, like here's the first artist signing their work, which I don't believe that to be the case. But I do think there is, if you look at that image visually, it's very compelling because it's the hand, it's the negative space of the hand, the presence of the hand that's now absent. So it's the present, and it got me thinking about, this putting your hand on a surface, and your painting is so much about that surface that and the surface is what you butt up against every day, right? The surface of things, the surface of materiality or language or whatever you want to use in that slot. I think it's every painter, you're like trying to break through that surface.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Berger, but I first thought of it while reading an essay he wrote about in a book called Shape of a Pocket.
Shape of a Pocket, good, because it reminds Shape of a Pocket, because it almost made me go farther. Like you put this negative space handprint on the wall, and you said to see what's on the other side of the wall, like that negative is the hole that you're seeing what's on the other side of the wall. But did you mean metaphorically what's on the other side of the wall, or physically what's on the other side of the cave wall?
Both. I mean, do we have to differentiate?
Yeah, that's good. Both. I like
Both.
that.
I mean,
no, we do not have to. You definitely have ESP, or I think you do, because you anticipated that. And then the whole thing about ego I would love to go into for a second is like a couple film people I've studied, George Manupelli, his mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression, and Cecil Taylor, the great jazz pianist, says I'm just a vehicle, and this just comes through me. So my question's stupid. I know it's both, and it depends, but is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technology or culture is dominant?
Well, that's like either or.
Yeah, it can be something else. So you can go anywhere.
Yeah. I don't think it's just self-expression. I mean, it's so many things. What culture is dominant? Self-expression.
It's sort of like vessel. I think you used the word vessel or vehicle earlier, but are you a vehicle, a vessel for something that you're coming through you? I'll tell you the hidden question, Lucas, really is, can art making be egoless?
I think it has to be egoless. I mean, I think art making has to be ego. I don't think you can have art unless it's egoless. I don't think I don't think the ego makes art.
That is amazing.
I don't think.
Was Freud right?
What did he say?
I don't know. I just throw in the question, it was Freud right, as a joke
Oh.
after that.
Oh,
Because
oh.
I'll tell you, the history of this question is amazing. 80% of people go, well, you got to have a little ego. One person finally came along and said, great art is egoless. And now you said it's got to be egoless. So that's, showing how people generally think, because this guy writes for the Wall Street Journal I interviewed last week, the music guy. He said, can art, was Freud right? And he goes, about everything, yes.
He was right about everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a joke, sort of.
Oh.
But when you talk about ego, it's usually this guy, Freud, turned us on to this thing, what we think is a dominant way of thinking, that there's this ego. So,
yeah, I see.
so it's just, again, the language problem.
Yeah. Oh, Freud had that, he never really understood this. I read one couple things by him, but that the oceanic feeling that Jung talked about, and that I can't remember what that was in reference to. Maybe dreams. Was it about dreams? Anyway, but this oceanic feeling that that people would talk about when they have mystical experience, or if they see an artwork and, kind of being overwhelmed, overtaken by something. And he said he confessed he never really understood what that meant, so I don't know. I mean, you need the ego for certain things, obviously you need the ego, but I don't think any artist who kind of stands by their work and says, yes, I did this, and this is how I did it. I just think they are just trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
They're not I don't think we can take credit for that which brings this feeling of, some kind of deeper oceanic or whatever, some kind of larger connection that art gives us,
No, this is truly enlightening for me. I really appreciate it. Is perception reality?
I don't know about that. I mean, perception, there was so much focus on perception growing up. And again, what do you mean by perception? I'm thinking about art and the perception of, what you see, and this kind of Robert Irwin, California art thing, of perception. And I don't think that's the whole story. I think, again, that eliminates feeling. I think perception eliminates doesn't eliminate it, but doesn't leave room for the subjective. So I don't like these kind of, just perceptual art, that art that's merely perceptual, because it feels like it eliminates a lot. And Morandi was certainly interested in perception and obsessed with perception and how things looked, and these bottles that he studied over the course of his life. But those paintings are not about perception. I think they're about, relationships between those things, or let's just say relationships. Could be between the object, or between the object and the negative space, but I don't know. What did you ask, Gary? Something about
it was good. You answered it. Is perception reality?
Oh, is perception reality?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess individual perception is subjective. I like Kierkegaard because, he's very subjective, and so you could say that's his that's his perception of things. So his perception of things is his reality.
Yeah.
I definitely don't have a problem with that.
No, that was good. You covered it really well. I really appreciate this. It's truly enlightening, Lucas, because you open up these questions a little deeper than that most of the people ask, and they're all people are good. It's not like one's better than the other, but it's like
Yeah.
I'm more about almost you exploring the surface of the thing you're painting on,
Mm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm more about exploring the question. Like, the answers aren't important.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
always think, did I answer the question? I go, you don't have to answer the question. I'm just throwing it out as a jumping off point, to
Yeah.
get going. So this one is like McLuhan said, everything we invent extends some humanness. So
Mm.
knife and fork extends our teeth, clothing extends our skin, maybe philosophy extends consciousness. It doesn't have to be a tangible thing, So what does the paintbrush extend for you? What humanness?
Mm. Well, there was that I guess it's maybe an extension of the touch
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like the what did the Chinese say? The hand, the eye, the hand, the hand, the heart, That so painting is like it's a mix of the hand, the eye or the mind, and the heart.
Yeah.
And a good work is kind of one that's where it's all nicely integrated, but the hand leads. It's the hand that leads. So I would say the hand, it's an extension of the hand, and the hand is kind of like the brain.
Yeah.
In a way, it's like your description of those 10 seconds that the pilot has when they're shot and they're going to go to, like, what do you do at that moment? And that's the hand, I think, leading in front of the brain, in front of the thinking,
Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
No, that was really good because it's perfect lead in. My friend says the three tenets, the T's of music are technique, theory, and taste.
Mm.
So Dave Liebman, who played sax with Miles Davis, he said the same thing in his way. He called it technique is hand,
Mm-hmm.
theory is head,
Mm.
and heart is taste.
Mm-hmm.
You've learned how to paint, you know how to mix your paints. That's like the theory or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Your technique is how to. If heart is like taste, how does one acquire taste in painting? Or is taste different from aesthetic? Because you say George Morandi is like
Mm-hmm.
someone you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
That guy just blows me away. It's like you
Mm.
show him a normal person and go, this doesn't look very good. They go,
Yeah.
it's like playing the Shags or some kind of John Cage music or something. What is
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
and but how, I mean, I understand how you acquired your taste because your
Mm-hmm.
mom was immersing you in this, but in general, how, I mean, besides that, how does one acquire taste and how does that differ from aesthetic? Is it the same thing? Like, if
Yeah.
would you have been the painter you are today if your mom wasn't showing you all that stuff? Like, did you just and then you
Yeah.
start painting? Like,
Yeah. No. I mean that I can't. I don't know what would have happened if she didn't
yeah,
show me that stuff. I mean, it may have set my life may have been set on a different course
yeah.
if I was shown other things or other,
But it's not solely that, is it, Lucas? Because it's not like, well, you could have gravitated towards Dolly, or you could have
yeah,
gravitated towards Lucian Freud, or
yeah,
whoever, or
yeah,
Paul,
yeah,
anybody,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Why? Yeah. Well, the question is, why are you? Artists have a different artists have different qualities, right? And so yeah, I don't know. That's I don't know. I don't really understand what aesthetics are in this
yeah,
context. You know,
yeah,
I mean, taste. is also kind of a word that's has a lot of associations, but maybe sensitivities
Yeah, that's
is like something that I can understand more,
yeah.
Than taste or aesthetics, because I think that's something that I can see, in a painting, the way, I mean, probably a jazz musician can hear a kind of, hear a sensitivity in sound,
Yeah.
and attention and to sensitivities that I can definitely see in paintings and feel in paintings, and it's, and maybe that's what a painting is ultimately, or a good sound is. There's some kind of relationship to the sensitivity of your environment or sensitivity of what's around you, and I don't know.
Well, and how open you are to it, because the answer is usually, how does one acquire taste? And they go, well, by listening. That's in music, by painting, by looking. I found my taste by looking at all these history of art for 50 years and know what I gravitate towards. And then this woman said last week, she goes, exposure is how you acquire taste.
Exposure to something.
Yeah, like you're exposed to it. So if you're never exposed to something, can you acquire that taste? It's sort of, I'm always amazed at a friend who I did music with. He was blind since birth, and he would dance when he was singing, and it was wild dance. And you had to be careful he wouldn't fly off the stage.
Right.
It wasn't like clunky white boy trying to be, a smooth dancer like the Temptations or something. He was like flaying his arms all which way, but it was a liberated feeling because he never saw people dance.
Wow.
So how does he know how you're supposed to dance?
Right.
But it was like, hey, it was as good as Martha Graham or, James Brown, who,
there's there's something innate, there is something innate. And so, and you can, that's why I think art education is ultimately, you can expose people to certain things, to a lot of things, but you can't, I don't know if you can, how do you educate? How do you make somebody dance like that if it's not inside of them?
Right. It's like, you become clones of what it's the anxiety of influences.
Yeah.
So tell me one major element that's changed since you started painting and one major element that stayed the same.
Well, one major element that changed very soon after I started painting was that celebrity culture sort of encroached on the art world, or came into the art world. And maybe it was there in the 60s. I didn't know about it. I was just pretty young. I was born in 1960. And I guess there was a certain element of celebrity in the art world, maybe with pop art and, the once the abstract expressionists were celebrated. But I wasn't really aware then of what was going on. I didn't know how popular that really was, or how much of a subculture it was at the time. But when I started painting in 1980, 81, and went to school, one of the things I loved about art is I thought it was just like this thing in my mom's room, like these catalogs of like these beautiful paintings, painting after painting. And then, you look at the back and maybe there's a little description about who the artist is and maybe a little picture, like a, larger than a postage stamp, but not splashy, certainly, of like the artist at their easel or whatever. If that, they maybe never had it. And I just thought, this is great. This is great. This is about the art. This is really about the art.
Yeah.
And then soon after, I started painting, I remember this kind of influx of like, I mean, the 80s kind of really got up to gear, and money was coming into the art world and in a different way, and celebrity culture came into the art world, and I just felt kind of a little betrayed. It's like, hey, wait a second, this is my little sanctuary here. What are you doing? Why are you coming in with this splashy thing and, you know, these glossy magazines about artists? This is like, just felt all wrong.
Yeah.
And there's no judgment about their art, about the art of, you know, but it was just something that changed immediately that I remember not ever really liking. And you still don't really care for it that much. It's anyway, so that's a big change. Then what has
well articulated, by the way, dude. But what is one major element that stayed the same since?
Oh, well, just it's still, you know, trying. I mean, still making a painting, you know, is still the same struggle. I think all there. I mean, one of the things that's fascinating about Morandi is that he painted his best paintings. I don't mean his early kind of metaphysical paintings with De Chirico and this art movement in Italy, but he painted, once he started on his own track of still lives, as if the 20th century never happened, as if modernism never happened. Yeah. And that he can be an artist today on the landscape that other artists look at, think about, and we talk about or look to, that is fascinating. And so that shows me something, that art is not not merely a fashion. I mean, of course, you have things come and go and change, and styles, and certain ideas become more prevalent or less prevalent in the art world. You have Clement Greenberg, and then you have reaction against Greenberg, and all these, and then postmodernism. But I remember even being a student and sitting in class and wondering if like postmodernism was just like, they were just making it up. You know, where's this coming from? Are you just they're just making it up? And then I think that probably is ultimately true, that it was made up, and you know, some kind of I don't know. I don't want to get into that, but I do think there are things in art that don't change.
Yeah.
And it's why you know, you can go, there's a museum in Cologne, Germany, called the Columba Museum. And it's really fascinating because they'll have, the way they've displayed art, or at least when I saw it, the way it was displayed, you might have 4 pieces of work in a room. And one is maybe a medieval, you know, wood carving from the 12th or 13th century. And then on another wall, you might have a monochrome painting from the 1970s, and, you know, something else. And the way they related and hung there, you know, you kind of felt, yeah, I accept that. There's qualities about each that I don't need to understand just with art history, how you get from that to that. They both had a presence that I just accepted. Yeah.
No,
So
that's good.
I don't know.
It's a good juxtaposition, because we're normally says, here's the medieval room, here's the pop art room.
Right.
Yeah, it's really beautiful they did that. So Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Yeah, I think our weaknesses are our strengths a lot of the time. Oh gosh, I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think in my work, I don't use, and I don't know if it's a weakness, but I mean, well, one I could just say, I never felt like I really learned how to draw. Like I feel like I can't really draw, you know, and I've drawn for my whole life. You know, I drew for 5 years in school. Well, I mean, there were a lot of years I didn't draw, but I'm kind of I'm not all that interested. I mean, I love looking at artist drawings, you know, but I don't really love my own drawings. I don't like them.
But how does that?
I mean, you know, that could be a weakness. You know,
But how does that turned into a strength then? That's good. That's a good point, because you know.
Well, I think it's not just drawing. I mean, I think maybe a weakness is that I could extend that with drawing and say that maybe a weakness I have is I'm not I don't like it. I hardly like anything that I do, you know. that's not a really good thing to have all around you all the time in the studio when you're trying to make something. But on the other hand, that very thing has kind of helped me work through something in a different direction. It's given me the freedom to kind of, you know, make something, put something down, look at it, say, you know what, I really don't like that. I'm going to destroy it. And then I, you know, destroy it, move, you know, put something else on it that makes it clearly not working. And then start again and get to something that does work, or that works in spite of me, you know, not. So there's that, that Feldenkrais, is it that the one, the guy who says, is he the movement guy?
Yes.
There's something about a movement exercise where they say to move in a certain way, like you make a movement, and if you feel that the movement is you're doing it by rote, or it's a learned movement or a habitual movement, you say pause and you stop it, and then you start again. So I would say, you know, in that way, I'm always searching for some kind of true movement in the work, and maybe I don't. Yeah, that's anyway. So
Lucas, this is amazing, because there's a poetry line that I like to explore. Like, what's the function of poetry? And I love this line. I'm going to read you, and I think it sort of encapsulates what you just said. It's Louis Bersani's Mallarmé study on the poet Mallarmé. He says, the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. So, you know, you sort of get there. Maybe those aren't the right words, crisis and threatens.
Yeah.
But the writing, like you going to make the painting, sustains the making of the painting. And so it's the bottom line is, but you're not like Zappa said, I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure. It's like you're sort of saying, I can't even draw, but I'm an artist that I sell in galleries and I'm in museums. But I don't even think it's very good. But you're not miserable about that. You're not like, it's not,
I'm still trying. I'm still trying.
Still doing it. That's like Sonny Rollins. He plays a concert. He's probably the greatest saxophonist in jazz history, or, you know, still living. He plays a concert, and then he goes backstage and he keeps playing. And the guys in his band go, dude, we're done. And he goes, I'm still trying to work it out.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that amazing?
Great.
But here's
that's like Bonnard would break into the Louvre, or he'd go into the Louvre because after his painting was hung, or some story like this, with some paints, and he would, you know, when the guards weren't looking, he would go and work on his paintings more.
Oh, I've heard that Dali did that too, or Picasso did that. Bonnard did that. Oh, I
think
that.
Bonnard. Well, Bonnard's the one I heard it about, but I don't know. Well, you got to get to the bottom of the legend. But Bonnard would make the most sense to me of all those three, because he, Picasso too, you know, but Bonnard really worked and reworked, and
Yeah. No, that's good to know. I love that idea. That's
Yeah.
like, but it's also here. This reminds me of Auden, the poet said,
Mhm.
the mystery of art is that we don't really know if it activates us or pacifies us.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, again,
Ah,
we're artists. We want to believe that art activates us or it does something to us.
yeah.
It could be pacifying us, not in a negative way,
In a good way.
in a good way. Like, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. Well, definitely. I think it does both. And it
yeah,
definitely, it probably does that too. I mean, when you say jazz, I mean, you think of jazz, you think of Miles Davis, or, you know, the effect of the horn, the effect of the sound on our bodies, on our souls, you know, it definitely can really still make us connect with the kind of stillness that
yeah.
that everybody craves, you know. Certain, I like, in a silent way, that quiet jazz, quiet period of him, you know, certainly
That's
pacifying us in a good way, right? Putting us in
oh,
our bodies and
see,
connecting us to something so sensitive and graceful.
yeah.
Um,
You named one of my favorite. That's like lifeblood for me. In
oh,
Asylum in live evil, but it's also like Thelonious Monk saying, "Silence is the loudest sound in the universe."
yeah, and that's great. And Rothko said something about there's nothing as accurate as silence. So he loved silence because it's so accurate. It's acute when everything falls away. You hear the sound of everything falling away, and just that,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. You
What's
know,
up?
yeah.
One of these words you said early on, I got like 6 pages of notes now, but you said
Well,
one word that was similar to that. That it's anyways, you've really been generous with your time, and I'm sorry about the
oh
tech.
no, it's great. It was my end. I think it was my internet, my thing that just conked out, or I
Yeah.
don't know what
Well,
happened,
yeah,
but
I know, but I mean, it's like it's beyond us. We're
yeah,
slaves to the internet, and it's been
yeah,
nice. Our live TV show's been pretty good.
yeah.
The robot crew freaked out for a few minutes. Maybe they needed lunch, but just a couple more
Yeah,
questions before
yeah, sure.
we're out of here. I really appreciate it. How do you find peace of mind?
Yeah, probably through painting. I mean, I think that thing of the everybody's in the room with you is what feels so makes one feel agitated, right? That there's not enough room in there for you, and I think for me, peace of mind is like comes with clearing out all those voices.
Yeah.
So you know, for me, it's painting. Yeah, painting, hiking. I mean, painting is a different. It's not just like a. I don't want to imply this like a therapeutic thing, but there's definitely a meditative practice to it. And but so painting, hiking, walking. Yeah, it's just I think the peace of mind is something really important, and movement. It often has to do with movement, you know.
Yeah, it's actually what you said earlier is when you ask all those things to leave the room and then you leave the
And then
room.
then it's really peaceful.
That is like peace of mind. I'm out of here. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well, and then the voice can come through you. Then the voice, like this Paulina Povalenko, I think her name is, this Ukrainian singer. What she said is the voice can come. Then there's room for the voice to come through you. And
Yeah.
in a way, you know, everybody seeks out these perfect places, like, you know, a yoga studio or these mountaintop retreats. You know, certainly those can be helpful,
Yeah.
but you know, in our lives, really, if we could, what would our lives look like, and what would they be if we could cultivate that all the time? And really, even if you're on a bus in traffic, and like letting all that come in, and not, you know, what happens is, I think, because we're so filled up with these things, we develop an adversarial relationship to our environment. It's like, I got to keep it out. And rather than, well, what if it, even there, you just become aware of the sounds and what's around you, and kind of let it go through you. So
That was
yeah,
beautiful.
that's why I was thinking the ego is a block. You know, the ego is a blocker.
Yeah. No, that was a great metaphor, the bus, because Joyce nailed it. He said, you can find epiphanies in everydayness.
Oh God, I
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And the
So,
slight, the slight observations to me are what
yeah.
are the most interesting.
Yeah. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
12. Well, I mean, this poet Jeffrey Young comes to mind. He wrote a poem about like it gets worse, and then it gets better, and then it gets worse, and then it gets better. It's like it keeps going. Like life is just up and down. It's ups and downs,
Yeah.
like pace yourself. Just, don't rush so much. And, I mean, when you're young, everybody's in a rush to grow up. 12, though, you're kind of in a good zone at 12 because you're still kind of, if I remember, it was a pretty good age because you're not yet into that teenager thing where you're rushing to be an adult,
Yeah.
It's kind of a little like immunity zone from, if I remember, from early childhood and then teenage years, which are kind of difficult and challenging, but probably not to rush,
Yeah. That's good. I like that. I like pace yourself ups and downs because that's what Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah. Yeah. And Beckett probably took a lot of that, putting on your pants, taking off your pants, put on your trousers, take off your trousers. Like the day begins, the day ends. And sometimes they don't know which end of the day they're in.
That's Beckett and Joyce hung out. The great story where Beckett's Joyce's secretary, and he's writing down stuff for Finnegan's Wake. And then someone comes, he says, write everything I say down. And then someone comes to the door and knocks on the door and says, hello, come in. He goes, you want me to write that down? He goes, yes, everything.
That's so great. I did hear that story. That is I love that story. Yeah. There's a painter, named Sean Scully, who made a painting called Come In, that I heard him talk once about it, that it came from that moment.
Really? That's nice. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's hard to let that much in. I mean, that's so incredible. Yeah.
Well, it's also that just what you're challenged with when you're painting, I'm sure, is how much is in your head. Okay, this was a question I almost forgot, and this is T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Oh God. I want to say something very simple. I don't know what language it is, but it's very simple. It's very slight and very, very small.
Yeah.
And
no,
it's not grand. But I think that's a great line, and maybe there is something heroic about just the doing of that. Is a kind of a heroic act. So that's where I think people get kind of misled sometimes. They think art's this big, huge thing. Okay, yes, it is. I mean, history painting is pretty. Yeah. There's lots of different kinds of artworks, but I think I'm attracted to that very
in intimate, simple simplicity, because you really nailed one of my favorite questions in 40 years of asking that question. One of my favorite answers was Abigail Child. She says, what language is your inner dialogue in? And she goes, I wish I knew.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can really put the words to it. It's like more of it's like a guttural. It's sort of like
but you don't my mother's complaining, or visual, or TV commercials. I mean, people give all, and then, you know, they say English. I goes, well, I mean, what form is your inner consciousness in? But it's like, I'm always curious, like musicians, when they get into that zone, that chewy caramel center where they're just there, you're not thinking, but it's coming out of you, but you got all this baggage to know what to do, but it's just flowing out of you. Same when you're painting. How do you get to that state, but then how does it really, you know, that's the mystery. We don't know how it like goes from your head and your heart to your hand, and then the paintbrush, and then the arm does something on the canvas.
Yeah. I mean, it's, that's really mysterious. And I like, for me, you know, the flaws in that, like the corrections, the missteps and corrections, like are really interesting, which you can see in art or hear in music. And there was that Miles Davis quote about the second note, like if you're improvising, you play a wrong note. You know, it's the note you play after that note that tells you what that previous note is or was. And I love that's free flowing kind of thing, and that being able to, you know, drop your brush, drop it on the floor, and then, oh, I'm just going to pick it up and do something else. So I think he reassimilates them into something else, you know.
No, that was really good too, because my thing is, I sort of say great art fucks your shit up and makes you say, I could do that. You know, you look at something and you go, oh, I can go home and do that.
Right.
And that's what's and then, you know, it's like, well, that one guy says, what kind of music do you like? He says, the kind of music that pisses me off. Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. Oh,
you know, but it doesn't have to be that confrontational. I think the Montaigne quote is like, the key word is, I paint like he like a drunkard. Kicking down the door. And then Monk said, there are no wrong notes. And my friend goes, yeah, for Monk, there are no wrong notes.
Right.
But it is like how well you cover them up or how well you integrate it.
Supposed to be for.
It's really hard because I love art, but it's just like I cringe when I go to art museums and galleries, but not bad cringing, but it's sort of like, you know, it's just become with the NFTs, like no fucking thing. I mean, I love NFTs, like no fucking thing. I mean, I love it because I love, you know, Duchamp, and I think these are the greatest artists ever. There's no art there, and people like they hate that I love it. I mean, it's that how are the artists going to flip NFTs and do something subversive with them, like artists do? But we're like, no, this is in, you know, it's a deep thing that all creative forces, there is that sense of commerce because we live in a capitalist world.
Right.
Can't separate them and just go.
A lot, not all of it, but some of the abstract expressionist painters, that period, I really am fond of that period, although it's very problematic. It was all men and kind of ridiculous. Although it wasn't, it turns out there were many women, but the men were getting more of the press. But that was also a situation where there was a lot of time and I think neglect. You know, everyone was looking to Paris, looking to French art. For contemporary art. They weren't looking at, you know, what the painters there were doing. So there's something about
the only fusion I see is between the cash box and the musician. You know, because Miles knew, you know, if I put Sly Stone Funk in a 4/4 backbeat on my jazz, I'm gonna sell a lot more records. And that doesn't mean it was doing something bad, because that's how I started. I started loving jazz through them and then realized, hey, I know what jazz is. I was raised on Cole Porter and Irving Berlin, and they use all kinds of jazz. But the key word, I loved what you just said, was play. And inferred the Walter Pater quote. He says, all art aspires to the condition of music, because play music. And
Right.
it's like, to me, it's like painting, literature, poetry, dance. They all wish they could be as cool as music.
I
But you
agree.
actually said poetry and music. Well, it's in the air, but again, then it's intellectual property. Like, I own that song. It's like,
Right.
no, someone else wrote that song 4,000 years ago. You just amplifies that paradox, really. And it gives us the opportunity of how you're going to navigate it. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and Warhol and McLuhan both said art is anything you can get away with. And
Mm.
I said that to my friend. He goes, "That sounds like Trump."
Oh, God.
And then
Yeah.
Abby Hoffman said his greatest influence was threw him at the stockbrokers, and they're all like, "Yeah."
You know, I did that when I was I did that in my senior year of high school.
What'd you do?
I got a bunch of friends together and I got them all to give me $10, and so I got about $100. And during the lunch break, I threw money up in the air where
Yeah.
all the students were congregating, and created this little mini riot. And then the principal came and said, "Oh, who's throwing the bills?" And we all ran.
And it's how he affected. You know, Carl Appel, Appel, that painter.
Yeah.
He was really connected with Marshall.
Uh-huh.
Marshall really was close to a lot of artists. He made an experimental film with Jane Jacobs, you know, the architecture lady.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
mean, the main thing he did was he teased people to believe his concepts were percepts. So he's in the literature world, he's in academia. So you're supposed to have concepts and theories. Like you started off saying, like, I'm not really into theories, but he had a sound like he was saying theories,
Yeah.
but really saying questions.
Right.
So he shows up in Woody Allen's film Annie Hall,
Right.
and
Right.
Annie Woody flips what Marshall is. He says his key line in that was, "You mean my whole fallacy is wrong?" Woody made him say it as, "Okay, if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?"
Oh, that should have been the icebreaker at the beginning of the conversation. What would I do? Oh, up to my neck?
You're up to your neck in a vat of vomit, and someone throws a bag of shit at your face.
Duck.
Nice. Okay. Joseph Beuys, his mantra was sort of make the secrets productive. Lou Welsh, beat poet, said, guard the secrets, constantly reveal them. But it was Thornton Wilder in 1928. He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Mm.
I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
Mm-hmm. So Boyce is making so do it again, because that
Boyce,
was a whole lot of quotations
yeah,
there.
yeah, no,
Boyce
says make the secrets productive. Lou Welsh said guard the secrets, constantly reveal them. But Thornton sort of says what art is telling the secret and hiding it at the same time.
What keeps you doing that?
What sustains you? But you know what
sustains you?
It's also well, you've already said that sort of the struggle, but it's not a miserable struggle. But it's also on page 3 of my notes with you. You learned from was it Marty or your friend? How do you do it?
How do you do it?
No, but the question I would say is, it's why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean it is I mean, there is that, especially with painting, is this idea of covering and uncovering, right? So you have this surface, you're covering it, but then you're also removing it or uncovering it. I mean, painting is not only an additive process. There's also erasure. There's that he flung a pot of paint at the canvas. He said it's like he flung it in the face of the public, so he was insulting him. like defaming his character. And he sued Ruskin, and he won the case. But he didn't win. He won like £1 or something, in the settlement. But it wasn't really about that. It was about, I think what that whole thing is that Whistler was trying to take his work into a more spiritual direction. The nocturne paintings and these beautiful falling rockets, they were very ethereal. It didn't, I don't think it ruined his career.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's one of those questions, like, how much do you put yourself out in the world and take on a critic, or
Yeah.
do you just say like, okay, well, whatever, that's his, I'm going to keep just doing my work and doing what I do. And that's always your dilemma, like, how much do you engage with the world?
Yeah, well, that's Warhol again. He said a great one that I use as a mantra. He says, "Don't worry about what people think." That's Warhol again. He said a great one that I use as a mantra. He says, "Don't worry about what people think of your art. Just keep making it."
Yeah, that's
But
great.
but it's great. But it's also, he was deeply affected by that, so he responded. So that's almost more the art's living on through these other ways. And once the artist makes their art, it's no longer theirs. The user can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, it enters into a different arrangement, different relationship.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very true. It takes on a different life.
Yeah. It's like Kubrick
in a suit. But
Lucas, I can answer that beautifully.
Okay.
Beautiful question. Or I mean, I can answer it and just give you a few backgrounds on it. And it's important because redemption goes back to Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. That's you fall, you get back up. You fall, you get back up. That's what Finnegan's Wake is basically. Okay. And so Burgess is a total Wakean. He wrote 8 books on Joyce. He wrote a book called The Shorter Version of Finnegan's Wake. Yeah, everything he got is from the Wake. He knows it, what you said. They don't want that wink to happen.
Right. Well, in his other films, I mean, that I haven't seen Clockwork Orange since I was 20.
Yeah.
So I need to watch it again. But in his other films, it's never that simple as a wink,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Dr. Strangelove, because of Terry Southern's writing too, is brilliant. And my friend is in Paths of Glory. And, that great scene where the cockroach runs just before he's about to be killed. And the cockroach runs across their last meal. And Joe Turkel's going, tomorrow that cockroach will have more life than me. And Tim Curry screens for 30 years. That's only UK screens. Then go to Spain and watch it. Who cares? Right. So what kind of philosophy was that? But James Harris, who worked with Kubrick, said, oh no, he only thought of 2 things: family and friend, or family and film. That's all. So he really thought, he didn't want to think that Kubrick had that bigger picture view. But I mean, what's your hunch? You're just sitting there.
Well,
I think it's more publicity or more fear,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I don't know enough about it, but that film, which is so much about images, that's, a little naive, and
it's way naive, but it's also, it's called causality. We don't know what causes people to kill other people, but there's definitely patterns that we can recognize. And if you have Clint Eastwood on every billboard in LA with a gun in the hand doing this, you think that's going to desensitize kids about what guns do? I mean, of course. I mean, we know that. But, you flip it back to McLuhan, he says his first book was all about advertising. Like, why don't we study advertising? Because it works.
Right.
Do they have some special do they have some special thing that they're doing that we can't do? We'll start doing that. But how much does it really affect us? Like, oh, they're shooting people in, Taxi Driver. I'm going to go out and shoot people. Right. So, does it alleviate our need to be violent, or does it causes us to be violent?
Yeah,
You know,
that's the question. Well, it
And that-
probably does a bit of both because
it does a bit of both.
repressing it all will also lead to violence. You know, repressing all violent urges or violent images. I don't know. I always feel like that. I mean, that it's their world. It's their world.
Yeah.
You know.
Lucas, that's the answer I get the most. What gives you the most optimism? And it's funny because it's a full circle interview. It's like, what's the best thing for a human being? I got that from Wilhelm Reich people. They go,
So it depends on, again, it
other
depends on,
people is hell.
probably depends on your mood, you know. I mean, especially in Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles when one of those rallies happened in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, 80,000 people. It was a lot of people, maybe more. And it was not the one in Santa Monica at the beginning, but there was one later in Hollywood, and that my family, we all went to, that was, there were no, I didn't see one police officer.
Yeah.
I think they just kind of year.
Yeah.
So why aren't we just all walking everywhere and riding our bikes everywhere and, you know, eating outside all the time? You know, there's like, it feels like now if somebody could land here now and design the city, you know, for the future, it would be with all that we know of what has happened.
Right.
It would be an incredible city, you know.
Yeah.
But it would be even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Okay, so it says live streaming has stopped, but it hasn't stopped. So now I need to find a way to stop this on the back end.